Oh, we're live, yeah?
I don't
Okay,
know. Are we live?
I think we are. Um, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Run It Once stream today. I'm Paul for Run It Once, coach under the Essential program, and this is Alexandra.
Hi.
And today we're going to be looking at delayed C betting.
Yeah. So these are hands that some of them are from our students, some of them are mine. I won't tell you which is which because maybe I punted. Uh, yeah, and this delayed CBET spot, I think it's quite important. It's not something people look at often, but especially because of that, you can gain quite a lot of edge in it because people don't really, protect their ranges properly. They don't really check raise enough. They make a lot of mistakes. So I thought it would be worth looking at this spot. We're gonna see different spots, blind versus blind, single raise spots, three bet spots. So yeah, quite an interesting spot to look at again. I want to tell you that during this stream, you can get, and a few, maybe an hour or so after, you can get another free month if you subscribe to Run It Once, either Essential or Elite. Um, if you use the code STREAM at checkout, again, you're gonna get another free month. So yeah, make sure you take advantage of this offer. Paul is going to link it in the chat. Also, if you like the way we analyze hands and just our thought process, feel free to join our Discord community where we do these hand review sessions for free almost weekly. Okay, that being said, should we get into the hands?
Yeah, let's jump into it. Let's see where we go.
So here we see an open from the cutoff, call from the button, and we decide to go for a squeeze with king jack offsuit in the big blind, which in my opinion is just fine. I'm not sure if any of those guys were recreationals or not, so let's just assume they were rags. Okay, and we get called by the button, which is quite interesting. That's something you see very often. Usually would get called by the open raiser, so I think here his range would be quite condensed around low pocket pairs and maybe some suited broadways, suited ace-x. Right, so initially, if you think of this board just as a, big blind versus button, 3-bet pot, I think we should actually be quite careful on this board, even though it's king high. We have a lot of stuff that doesn't really connect here, and, equities are going to shift a lot on this board, but now, thinking it's a squeezed pot against button, I think it becomes much better for us because it doesn't really connect with those low pocket pair ranges. I don't think people call enough tens and nines against an open raise from button against cutoff. So I think we could see that this board quite often. I'm not sure. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, looking at this spot, personally, I think I would for sure be betting at a very high frequency, if not range betting, and that's just because this board is going to connect extremely well with our squeezing range. So we're going to have some pocket nines, we're going to have tens, we're going to have kings, we're going to have 9-10 suited and king 10 suited, and then obviously aces, kings, ace king type of hands. So I would probably bet at a high frequency. As you said, the player on the button is going to have a bunch of underpairs, he's going to have a bunch of ace highs, and then he's also going to have some broadways that connect with this hand, connect with this board, but a bunch of those are currently going to be weaker than this hand. So yeah, I'm happy to just bet here rather than go for a check.
Right. I think it also, our frequency is going to depend a lot of how we construct our big blind squeezing range. Because if you look into GTO Wizard or other ranges, it's going to be very, very polar. So we're going to have a lot of trash here, like offsuit ace-x and stuff like that. Personally, I don't 3-bet as polar because I don't think people defend correctly. So I kind of prioritize playability. And if we go for a slightly more linear range, like I do here, we can probably see that more often, as you say. Okay, but we decide to go for a check, and he checks back. There's a deuce of spades, and I would say here if we decide to check the flop, which is probably not a mistake, especially if we're facing someone a bit more aggressive, I think on this turn we should probably start betting, especially when we unblock both of the flash draws that we could get calls from, but might check back otherwise. You know, as you say, a lot of pair plus draws here to call that might not bluff themselves. So, yeah, I think I would like to see a bet here pretty much always. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would. Once villain checks back, he's obviously capped himself to the weaker portion of his range, and now I'm pretty happy with my hand. And like you say, we don't block those two flush draws that could potentially be calling. So yeah, I would very often just be going for a bet here, and sizing up due to the flush draws and the nature of the board as well. I think villain's going to have, a bunch of hands like Jack 10, Queen 10 type of hands, maybe some Ace 10, Ace Jack type of hands as well. So, yeah, would definitely size up too.
Okay, but we decide to check again, which I don't really like. I'm not sure what the thought process behind this was. But yeah, I think at this point this becomes a mistake to check again. And we're probably losing quite a bunch of value.
I mean, I guess it sort of depends. If he's got some, you're able to shut your window. That was extreme. That was really loud. Yeah, for the people in the chat, if we have reads on the guy on the button and we know that he potentially overstabs, maybe it can become a little bit closer and you're going for a check raise maybe, but yeah, as a standard I would just be betting.
Yeah, but that's the thing with, like, did you say, what did you say, sorry?
I said, maybe our hero here has got some notes on imposition that he's like overstabbing and maybe going for the double check here. He way overstabs on turn.
Yeah.
And it makes it slightly better to go for a second check, but of course, I think this hand would prefer to bet overall.
I was assuming that's what you were going to say, and I think that would be fine against, again, if he was the original open raiser, but I think if it's the button calling, he's just gonna have too many low pocket pairs and ace-x that are probably not going to stab here all that often, even someone who's aggressive and generally overstabbing. Do you think that's the case or not really?
Well, it depends. If someone's aggressive, then they should start turning some lower pocket pairs into bluffs now. And if he's got a range that is highly condensed around lower pocket pairs and ace eyes, then I think that checking could be a good option. It all depends on the makeup of the ranges, and if we're playing at lower stakes and maybe the ranges are slightly off, it's going to be. I think just betting would make sense. But yeah, we've stuck on this spot for long enough. Let's see what happens.
And so now we can't really get much value. I mean, yeah, I don't think I would bet here at this point. As we said multiple times, his range is probably gonna have a lot of ace-x and then under pairs that are probably not going to call anyway. So yeah, just going for a check and evaluating the river, I guess it would make sense. Would you ever bet?
No, I would just leave this into I'd bluff cash on river here sometimes, depending on size. But yeah, overall, I think that our hero here just made a mistake by not betting either flop or turn.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so yeah, pocket fives. And this is the thing, right? Something like pocket five should probably be turned into a bluff at some stage. So yeah, I think this is. Yeah, not great from hero here if he was leaving it in a check call line on turn.
Yeah, apparently saying he's not bluffing with this, which is probably not even supposed to be in his range against the squeeze size at this rake structure, and if it is, it should be very low frequency, and it's probably the bottom of his range. He still doesn't bluff, so yeah, probably terrible to slow play here. Should we go next hand then? Anything else to add?
Let's do it.
Okay, here we open tens in the cutoff, get called by the big blind, and the board is 6 deuce 5. Big blind checks. I guess he's supposed to have some dunks here, and we decide to check back, which is quite interesting. As seen on this board, again, it really depends on how he constructs his range, because on these low straight boards, he is allowed to dunk at a decent frequency, and if he doesn't have dunks, we should be much more careful with our batting range, and usually these higher pocket pairs are going to check back, while stuff like sevens, eights, nines are going to bat more often, or even top pairs that we have. So yeah, I think this is a check back close to pure if he never dunks, but then if he does dunk, we can see bet it at a decent frequency. What would you do here, and what would be your assumption on big blind's range?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'd agree with you. I think this board should have donk frequency from big blind, and of course, if big blind isn't ever implementing donks here, then we have to be more careful as in position. And generally, I would play it quite similar to you. So bet in more of my sevens, eights, nines that need a lot more protection, and then check in behind with more of these tens, jacks, queens types of hands, and then just pure checking kings and aces. And the reason for that is, and the reason why big blind can have such a donk frequency is because they're going to have proportionally many more hands that contain, pocket twos or 5-6 type of hands. So, yeah, I'm happy with the check back here. H2B says this is Alexandra's hand for sure. Is this one of yours, Alex?
Yeah. Why is it my hand for sure?
Maybe the confidence with which you said some things. Let's see what happens on turn then.
Yeah, and on turn the turn pairs and whoever played this hand decides to go for a 1/3. Yeah, about this hand, I think I mostly wanted to check the size, because from my knowledge, usually when the turn pairs we want to size down a bit, but then in practice, I think it's very likely that most villains are not going to protect the range enough with full houses or six-sacks. So I was thinking maybe in practice we want to go a bit larger. But yeah, I'm not sure about that. Wanted to ask what your opinion is on this spot.
I really like this size. I think it's really good. I think obviously there's a lot of assumptions up to this point, but one thing that's for sure is once villain just checks flop and then checks turn, he is going to have more of a capped range than, for instance, if he had donked flop or if he had probed turn. And I think in this situation, even something like ace king, I think can start to bet for this sort of size. Ace queen can start to bet for this size, and then I think a lot of our over pairs, whilst they are definitely strong enough to go for a bigger size, I think our range here generally does just want to go for a smaller size very often, just because I think villain's range is going to be quite capped, and I don't think we have to bet so big to put it in a tough spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's see what happens. We get called, and the river is an ace. So I think this is quite interesting. After the size we used on the turn, we are probably, a villain is probably going to have a bunch of ace highs. I imagine he's going to call, especially against cutoff, he's gonna have some ace queen, ace jacks, ace 5, ace deuce, obviously ace 3, ace 4, if he doesn't probe those. So I think he's going to have quite a lot of ace highs, but on the other hand, he's still going to have a very wide range. So I was thinking, is this still worth a value bet here? Seems quite close to me. What do you think?
No, I think in practice you will see some players still value bet this on the river, and maybe against some players it's not going to be a huge mistake. But I don't think we'd see a solver value bet tens here. Just because on the turn, once he check calls, I think he should have some hands like he should be protecting his range with ace x of diamonds and clubs. He should also probably be calling with hands maybe as weak as ace 10, I'd imagine. I'd say ace jack for sure. You should still have some ace queen in his range. So I think we'd have to be careful with tens. And if we are betting on turn with some of our ace queen, ace king, then I think we primarily want to construct our betting range around 6x and ace x. So going for a bigger sizing, and I don't think that tens can really fit into that bigger sizing.
Yeah, good point. Again, I did value bet this here. And the thought process behind this is I'm not sure what a solver would do. Probably would be quite close, or maybe always checking back. But a solver would also still have some very strong hands in his range to go for a check raise here on the river, and he would also have some check raise bluffs. And I think in practice it doesn't really happen all that often, which allows us to value bet thinner. But again, this might be a bit too thin.
Yeah, I think something else that I'd like to see this one just in a solver to look at our assumptions, but I would imagine on the river that players in game may start to have to fold some sevens and eights in their range, and I don't know, maybe not on a paired board, but I think they'd be very low EV, and I think in game people would just pure call those hands very often. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if we can jump into GTO Wizards and take a look.
Sure. Big blind versus cutoff. I just have 3-bet pots. I'm just gonna pre-fill it.
Yeah, single raise pot, perfect.
Yeah, I was also thinking this can be perceived as quite an overbluff texture, because I don't
change the board.
Yeah, I don't think people assume we're betting very many ace-x, and then, there's just a bunch of stuff we could bluff with. So, I don't know, still seems quite close. Do you remember what the board was? 6 deuce 5?
The 2 was a diamond, 5 of clubs.
Right, so quite a lot of donking. I'm not sure how accurate this is. Should we leave it in or take it out?
Maybe let's take it out. We can look at both, I suppose, if we do it quick enough.
Yeah, so with the donk, we are betting 50% of the times, and tens here are very frequently betting. But yeah, with the backdoor flush draw more often than not, which is expected. And without the donk, our betting frequency goes much lower. Still tens are bet at a decent frequency, but the higher we go, you see the less we bet, and the lower we go, the more we bet. Once it goes check check, there's a 6 bringing a double flush draw. He checks, and we don't really bet tens here all that often.
No, but yeah, I don't imagine. I don't know. I'm not sure how people are going to probe this spot. I think this actually may be what is happening. I don't know. It's obviously very difficult to assess what happens in a probe spot, because some people play very far from GTO. But if you just put a check here, I think the overall way we were thinking about this spot is generally pretty solid, right? We see, nines and tens and jacks betting at some frequency. We're sizing down, like we said, and we're still value betting ace queen and ace king, like we said. So a general heuristic here, I think, is pretty nice. And then if we just go to the bet line and see what happens. So yeah, there should still be a bunch of hands here that want to check raise, and obviously, well, as we said here, I'm actually surprised that ace-9 is the cutoff. I thought ace-10 may be the cutoff here, but as you can see, the ace-10 off, ace-jack off, ace-queen off hands are all just pure calling, and even some ace-8 and ace-9 should be calling. I imagine they would be folding just because of the bad blockers, but yeah, they're still supposed to be calling as well, and then a bunch of the suited ace-x as well. So yeah, in this solver, I expect then when we get onto the river, the ace to be particularly bad.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do also like your thought process just on how they're supposed to still have hands to check raise on the river as both bluffs and as value as well, and maybe they don't have enough. So let's see what happens. Okay, so actually a spot if they can start to implement donks here, that's like interesting in some way. But
It's just 1%. I'm not sure how
yeah,
relevant
but
that is.
I think if you ever start to see any sort of donks, it's gonna lead you to uh, understanding how the range is made up, right? If there's like if there's ever a percentage of donks, it means that the range is going to connect with this card in some way.
Yeah.
And then once they check, as we see here, primarily uh, primarily choosing our betting range focused around ace x and 6x, which is what I mentioned. We, like I said, we're going to have these ace jacks, ace queen, ace kings in our range to value bet, and then we're going to have the 6x, and then you see nines, tens, and jacks not really interested in reopening the action, at least in a solver.
Yeah,
But
but it's also betting extremely polar.
yeah, but that's what I said. If you're betting your 6x and ace x, you are going to choose a bigger sizing than 60, 75%.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously when you change it, yeah, this again, I still don't. I think
Yeah.
this is the main thing, right? You still are not really incentivized to start betting those middling pocket pairs,
Yeah, there's
and
just
yeah,
too much ace-x in the range, and if you look at what they're supposed to call with, like king queen off, I think this spot is also going to be quite overfolded.
I don't know. I think it's quite a weird one, right? Because first of all, do people have ace eight, ace nine off? Do they have ace eight, ace nine suited all that often? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, they are supposed to call king queen, but they're also supposed to fold sevens, eights. If they've ever got tens, they're supposed to fold. A bunch of 5x is supposed to fold. Which in reality, I don't really think like on a paired board, 5x, sevens, eights, nines, tens, are ever really going to be folding. So it does become one of those ones in a solver where how close is it to reality? Maybe they don't have as much ace x. Maybe they do overcall the 5x in the pocket pairs. So I'm not going to say it's like I wouldn't say it's a huge mistake, but I do think the way that I would play this spot is just yeah, going for the polar bet on the river and condensing around ace x and 6x.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I just took out the raises, which is definitely too extreme scenario, but I was curious if he's never allowed to raise the river, can we still value bet? I think no. And if like in this very extreme scenario we are still not allowed to value bet, then it's probably quite bad.
Yeah, you actually see here that in this scenario where he does have a bunch of ace x on the river and he is folding a bunch more of those pairs, a bet with tens here becomes quite bad. If you look at the EV numbers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's quite a big EV loss for a small pot.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say the same with jacks. Hover over jacks quickly. Just, I mean, it's basically the same hand. Yeah. Okay, cool. Nice. So that was interesting anyway.
Yeah, although what I would like to mention is that I think if this was an overcard that's not an ace like a king or a queen, we definitely still have a value bet.
Yeah, I'd actually change that. And I think I generally agree. And then again,
Whoa.
okay, yeah, no, we don't.
Yeah, but again, it's picking just this huge size. It's betting 3x the pot.
Yeah, I actually quite like this strategy. This is what I was thinking of in game. Not 3x, but like on the ace at least, going for this big overbet just because I want to condense my range around ace x and 6x. I think that would be nice in game.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's quite
Okay.
interesting.
Especially if people make the wrong assumption that you're not going to be value betting ace queen, ace king on the turn. They probably don't expect those hands in your range on the river, and the times they do have, ace three, ace four, they probably way overcall, even to the big overbet. So
Yeah, I agree. Wanna see what happened here?
let's see.
Wah,
This
wah,
is
wah.
yeah, exactly what we didn't want to come up against. So yeah, nice.
Okay. Any questions in the chat? Should we go to the next hand?
No, yeah, nothing at the moment. Let's jump to the next one.
Here we open cutoff with king 3 suited, get called by small blind and big blind. I think it's very likely at least one of them is a recreational. Goes check, and we check back. I think three ways, especially after a small blind call, we should be quite careful on this board. That doesn't mean we never want to have Cbets, but I think this hand would be A bit too weak. Maybe we can see by some king X with a backdoor flush draw and backdoor straight draw with a 6 or a 5, but generally we should probably have quite a lot of checkbacks on these textures.
I think a 3 is maybe better than a 6, just because it can make a straight on the lower end and above.
Oh yeah, I didn't really realize it. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, this could be bet, but I mean, 3 ways. I'm not going to be betting as frequently, and I think the mistake that happens multi-way, especially when there's a recreational in the pot, is that people way overcall hands that should be folded. So for bluffs, I'm going to be quite imbalanced in this spot, and I'm going to over check with weak hands and then start to bet more with my value bets.
Yeah, that makes sense. So goes check check, and goes check check again. At this point, I mean, I'm not sure. I could see some arguments for betting, although, as you say, I think especially if there's a recreational in the pot, they are probably going to overcall some hands that should be folded. On the other hand, I think people don't really go for enough check raises in this spot with strong hands like 2 pairs or sets, so I think they are going to be more kept in practice than they would be in like a solver like Poker Snowy, I assume, or something that could solve 3 ways. So yeah, I wouldn't hate betting here, but I think we should be quite careful, especially now we have a slight amount of equity, although the lower end of the straight is not that great. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very close. I think I would still just opt to check back here, just because I still think players will still call way too many hands. We still have equity that I don't really want to get check raised off, even if that doesn't happen a bunch of the time. We have a gut shot. We have an over to 3 of the board cards. If one of the players has got pocket 8s, we've got an over to that hand. So yeah, I'm
And
probably
reverse implied odds when we hit our straight. If
yeah,
he has
maybe.
pocket 8.
Yeah, I mean, if he specifically has pocket 8s or 7-8, yeah, of course. But they're still going to have a huge amount of ace-x. But yeah, I would probably mostly check back here. And I can still bluff on the river, right? It's not like bluffing's out of the question on river once we check back. So yeah, I'd mostly check.
Okay, let's see what happened. We decided to go for a bet, which again I think is fine. As I said, quite close. We get a fold and another call. I think at this point, if the river is, a blank, I would like to continue river as well, just because I think there's so much stuff like 4-5, 7-5, 6-5, 6-8, whatnot in their ranges that would probably fold on a blank river. So yeah, if we bet here, I think we should continue the river unless, the run out is paired or something like that. What's your thoughts on that? Would you go for another bet on the river, or would you give up?
If I'm betting turn, I'm very often going to be betting river, yeah, for sure. Because I think people will probably call a little bit too much here and then maybe overfold river. But yeah, generally, I don't think I would be betting all that often on turn, especially on the 6 as well. I just don't think it's that great for our range. But yeah, I just don't really like the bet to begin with, just because the 6 interacts way more with both small blind and big blind's range than it does our range. Like, we are going to have a bunch of ace-x that checks around the flop and now is a value bet. But yeah, I'd be careful on this turn. Yeah. In answer to your question, I would probably be barreling river if I bet on turn.
Yeah, well, I still think we should have some bluffs here, and it should probably be stuff that has some kind of equity. I guess we should prioritize 8x, as that also has an overcard, maybe usually 2 overcards, because we're gonna have like what, 8, 9, king 8, queen 8.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't hate this. I don't think it's terrible. Yeah, it's okay.
And now we hit our straight, but we face a 3/4 donk bet here. So yeah, this is quite interesting. I think especially for this size, it's probably going to be a bit underbluffed, I would say. And this is probably going to be very often a straight, but on the other hand, we can split with value sometimes. So yeah, I'm not really sure about this. I'm a bit on the stationy side, so what's
Yeah, I'm
your thoughts
just
here?
if I get here, I'm just going to be clicking the call button. Obviously, we don't have to be correct all that often. We are supposed to lose more than we win. I would be worried that does this guy, as you say, bet 3x here on the river? Does he bet some ace 5 here, tagged in some of our ace x that, you know, delay cbet? We probably, I'm not sure how much 8x we even get here with, and maybe that's also what villain 128 is thinking. So, yeah, I'm just going to be clicking call here with this hand. I don't think there's too much to think about. We're going to lose more than we win, but yeah.
Doo-doo-doo-dum. Okay, yeah. I would also always call here, although I'm not sure how
I
correct that is. I guess you're right. I guess if we get here and we make a straight, we probably have to call this. Although I'm not sure we're winning very often. We're probably splitting or losing in most scenarios.
I think this is one of the problems with betting this hand on the turn, though, is that when you bet this hand on the turn, most of 8x in villain's range is going to be continued. So pockets 8, 7, 8, 6, 8. A lot of those hands are just going to be calling, obviously ace 8 here. And then it makes this situation on the river worse, right? It's not like we can get to this river and comfortably value bet, even if villain checks to us, you know. But if we were in a check line and we river the straight here, villain's still going to contain, you know, all of their board pairs. They're going to contain ace x. They're just going to have a full wide range, you know, where the value bet becomes a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. Makes sense. Okay, should we go next hand?
Yeah. Hey to the guys in chat, and hey Davide. Davide says hello, guys.
Hello everyone. Okay, before we look at this hand, I would like to remind you that during the stream and shortly after the stream, there is a promotion available on RunItOnces where if you use the code STREAM at checkout, you are going to get a free month of Elite or Essential on the top of the month you pay for. So a very good deal. I advise you to take advantage of it as long as it will be available.
Yeah, nice. Okay, let's jump into the hand.
We go for a 3-bet cutoff against Under the Gun, and he makes the call. The flop is Jack 7, 6, and he checks. At this, in this scenario, I will admit I've checked this hand before because I was really curious what's happening here and how often we can bet. Because usually, you know, on these flash draw boards where there's also 2 middling cards connected, we should be a bit careful. And what I've noticed is that Under the Gun is actually supposed to donk range here, which I was very, very surprised with. So yeah, I don't think people will usually have donks in this spot, and that means we should probably be very, very careful here. I guess it also depends how often, and if we do 3-bet ace-jack offsuit in this position, that is probably going to help us way more. But I guess the idea is that, you know, we're still going to 3-bet some offsuit hands that don't really connect as well here. We're gonna have a bunch of ace-king that doesn't really connect here, while his range is going to be mostly suited cards and, you know, pocket pairs that are doing decent on this board. So yeah, I think we can definitely bet aces here, but we shouldn't bet range, so this is quite a nice hand to check back. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in game it's good to recognize that this firstly isn't a board that you want to be, you know, range betting on, just because it doesn't connect to your range all that great. It does connect to out of positions range in a lot of ways. I wouldn't have expected that there was a range donk, but obviously if in GTO there's supposed to be a donk or a range donk, it just goes to show that as in position we can't go mindlessly bet in this spot. And again, as Alexandra said, if we can't go bet in this spot all the time, aces is always a nice hand to put into your check back range. Just needing no protection. yeah, I think it's a nice hand to check back with. So let's see what happened.
Yeah, we do see a check back. Although I'm thinking maybe I would prefer to bet these combo faces just because there's a lot of flash draws and backdoor flash draws that will call us when we don't block any of those, and maybe check back a bit more often with the ones that do block those combos. Although on the other hand, when we have a backdoor flash draw, we have slightly more equity. Sorry, something. Yeah, sorry. um, so yeah, I don't mind betting this sometimes.
Davide says, when do you start range betting here? Queen 7-6, King 7-6. I generally think that Queen 7-6, King 7-6, any of those boards with those two middling cards that are quite connected are not going to be range bets. Alexandra, do you know a little bit more about that in GTO?
Yeah, I think maybe King X is still going to be a range bet because, as I said, we have all the Ace King and he rarely has that. And then Queen 7-6 is probably going to go down as he also has Ace Queen, but then again we have Ace Queen offsuit, which he doesn't. So I think those would probably be better. Even this, as I said, would be better if we 3-bet Ace Jack offsuit. But what I would like to mention here is that the reality is going to be a bit different from the solvers because most people, like, especially if they're supposed to dunk range and they never dunk, we take out their dunks, we're probably supposed to range check. And then if we do bet, especially if we bet way too often, they're probably supposed to find a lot of check raises. I wouldn't even be surprised if you'd see a strategy from out of position where it purely check raises or folds and never calls. Well, in reality, what's happening is that people never find enough check raises, which first of all allows us to realize more equity, and second, they are going to call a bunch with hands like 8s, 9s, 10s, 7-8, and those hands are not going to be able to face multiple turn barrels. So to answer your question, I think higher cards are going to be better. I still don't think it would be a range bet in GTO, but I would definitely not mind range betting them in practice due to, what I just said, due to population tendencies.
Yeah, and Ben Lafferty says, even though it doesn't hit our range, we're ahead the vast majority of the time, right? Yeah, we're nearly always going to be ahead with aces here. And he says, and we can get value from 8s, 9s, Ace Jack, 10 Jack. So yeah, we definitely can. We're definitely ahead a vast majority of the time with aces, and we can get value from a lot of worse hands. But in this situation, we still want to think about our hands like King Queen or Ace King, Ace Queen. Pocket 9s, pocket 10s. There's a bunch of hands in our range that can't go, bet in flop at least. And so the reason why we do start checking back a lot here is to protect our whole range, not just thinking about our exact hand in this situation.
Yeah, because there's so many hands that we can get value from, worse, but then if we start betting all of them, then when we check back on the turn, we're only going to have trash, and he's going to be able to put a lot of pressure on us while we're not really be able to bet any bluffs because we don't have any value, so we have to check back sometimes with strong hands here. Anything else to add about the flop? Should we get to the turn?
No, let's jump to the turn.
Okay, so the turn's a 4, he checks, and now we decide to go for a bet, which I think is fine, even though this doesn't really hit our range all that often. It doesn't hit out of positions range. I mean, yes, it is connected, but it doesn't really bring any 2 pairs or any realistic straights in his range, so this is pretty much blank. The only thing it does is it does bring more equity to hands like 4-5 or 6-5. But yeah, this aces here is definitely strong enough to start betting. And if we check back, we're probably missing quite a lot of value, especially if we assume people are not value betting thin enough on the river or bluffing enough, which might be the case.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you nailed some points there.
Okay, and we do get a fold. Nothing else to add here. But yeah, I think it's interesting, to talk about finding checks in this spot and not always being kept when we check back. I guess this is the main point of this hand.
Yeah.
Okay, we open ace jack off from MP, and we see a king queen 8 board. I think this board should be a cbet at a very high frequency for even for a big size like 3/4, 67%. And yeah, ace jack, especially when we have a backdoor flush draw, should probably be close to a pure bet. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to be betting this at a high frequency, just having the gut shots, having the overcard, having the backdoor flush, and again, this board just being ever so good for our range. We're going to have kings, queens, eights, king, queen. Villain isn't going to have as many of those stronger hands. So yeah, happy to just bet this one for 66% very often.
Okay, we see a check back, which I don't think it's going to be terrible, although I would much rather check back here without the backdoor flush draw, because that gives us a little bit less equity. So this one gives us more equity. So yeah, considering it's going to be a high betting frequency, I think it might be close to pure. Probably not a huge mistake to check back sometimes, but yeah, I would bet this really often. And turn is a deuce, bringing the flush. Villain checks, and at this point, I think the solver is going to be a bit more careful. Again, the same scenario as the other hand. I think in practice, people are going to be way more kept here when they check. I don't think they're going to check a bunch of 2 pairs or flashes or sets here. So therefore, we can bet more often and thinner for value. About this hand though, I'm not sure it's going to get many better hands to fold or many worse hands to call. So I guess if we bet here, it's not clearly a bluff or a value bet. But again, facing these earlier positions, our threshold for bluffing goes higher. Just because there's not as many trash in both ranges. So yeah, I don't mind seeing a check here, don't mind seeing a bet. What's your thought?
Yeah, I think I would mostly start a bet here. I think I actually think we can get a lot of better hands to fold. So I think a bunch of 2x in villain's range now will start to fold, as will 3s through to pocket 7s.
Without clubs, I don't think. Like obviously it depends on the size that we use, but the ones with clubs, I don't think would fold. Do you?
No, not massively. But then we can still barrel on some rivers. Yeah, I think it's close either way. I don't mind. But as you said, we're struggling for hands here to have as bluffs to go with our value bets, because I think a lot of our natural bluffs are just going to be bet on the flop, right? Our 9-10s or Jack-10s, Jack-9 suited type of hands. Ace-10s might be bet a bit more frequently on the flop. So yeah, I think we do. We're going to have some value that wants to bet here. I would also have some bluffs.
Yeah, and also when we do get called by a better hand, we still have equity, right? We have a backdoor flush draw, we have an overcard, we have a gut shot, so...
Yeah, we it's an interesting one, this as well, just because we can guess some worse ace-x to call here. So, Villain's got ace-10 or ace-9 with the ace of clubs. I think he's going to sometimes call that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few different properties going on here, so...
Okay, we decided to go for a small bet, which, again, like as the previous scenario, it's probably the size a solver would pick, but in reality, if he's not really protecting his range enough, I think we could also use bigger sizings. What size would you pick here?
Yeah, I don't mind this. I don't mind closer to a 60, 75 type size. I think either is fine. This isn't a spot where I have a good understanding of what's going on in GTO, so yeah.
Alright, and we hit the river.
I mean, if we're
Checks.
going to bring the 10 of spades on the river, let's just bet bigger on turn, right?
Yeah, that's how it works. Um, that's exactly how GTO thinks about this spot. And we go for a 3/4 spot size bet, which, sorry, yeah, maybe we should talk about this before, but I don't think this is a spot where we can just start over betting, especially after such a small size on the turn, and we probably want to, get as much value as possible. I just think going for like 3/4 is probably going to be the standard size and very likely the only viable play. Would you do anything else here?
No, I think the sizing is good. I'd actually be interested to just have a quick look at a GTO Wizard on this one and see how it constructs his flop and turn range and then subsequently river.
Okay, we get a fold here and let's see what happens. What is this?
MP versus big blind, I think.
Should we use under the gun?
Yeah, if you want to. So it's going to be very similar.
Yeah. King, queen, 8. So we use a small size, but it's almost a range bet. There is a very, very, very tiny amount of checking back with our hand.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the check line then. So yeah, this is the thing. I mean, I would be playing close to a range bet even for a slightly bigger sizing, and so that's why I feel a little bit lost on the turn, just because I wouldn't really be in that situation.
Now you see
often.
like a bit. Now it's a pure bet with this hand. I guess it's because it's a bit more polar and we just need to prioritize hands that have more equity. So I'm gonna change it back to 40 just so we have some of this hand on the turn. But still, when you see these, I don't think implementing checkbacks is going to be.
I would maybe just leave it as the 67% because I guess that's what's going to be happening with our hero in game is they're choosing a bigger size and then having checkbacks, because if they're betting 40%, they're probably just betting range, right? So even though we don't have this hand, we can still just get the idea of what's supposed to be happening on turn and river. I think we're less worried about this exact combo and more about our whole range, right?
Yeah, that's true. So first of all, we see that his probing frequency, even for a small size here, is very low. And if we look at, I think this is going to be relevant because in reality, I doubt this is going to happen. So you see his flash throws are betting very infrequently, and even their flashes are checking at a very decent frequency along with 2 pairs. Sets. Open-enders are not betting all that often, and I think in practice people are going to bet those way more frequently, especially the flushes. So that would probably allow us to go for a bigger size here.
But yeah, generally choosing this smaller size, which does make sense.
Yeah, I'm going quite thin for value. No, this is 2 pair. Yeah, like Queen X is a bet very often. So yeah,
Okay.
betting quite mergy here. We bet. Interesting, they're protecting their range quite often, but only raising 6%. And you are right, we are actually getting quite a lot of better hands to fold, although in this there's not many deuce-X in his range. And river was a 10. Yeah, now we're using a pot size, not a 3/4, but it's still a big size and not an overbet, so I guess our heuristic was quite right. Is there something specific you wanted to see here in this game?
I just wanted to see that turn bet range and just sizing in GTO. It makes a lot of sense to go for a small sizing. Obviously, there's exploitative reasons you could choose a bigger sizing, but yeah, I quite like this. Yeah, that's all I want to see really.
Okay. Should we do one more hand and wrap it up?
Yeah, sounds good.
If you guys want to see more of this and us reviewing more hands, even your hands, you can join our Discord community, and you can always send us hands to review on the RunItOnces stream or on the study sessions that we are doing in our Discord. Paul is going to link it in the chat.
Yeah, there's also a forum section on RunItOnce, and the streams are being posted there. So if you have any hands and would like to see them on the stream, then yeah, you can get in touch with us there as well, and we can look through some of your guys' hands.
I guess this is a call. I'm not sure why Hold'em Manager does this, where it covers with the button. There's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, we open under the gun 9-10 suited. I know Paul has been recently studying this spot, so yeah, the assumption is going to be that button's range here is going to be quite condensed around ace highs and low pocket pairs. So when this board hits kind of everything there, while a lot of hands in our range don't really hit, like in Queen, King, Jack, Queen 10, Queen, Jack, and so on, we should be quite careful. I would assume this would be close to a range check, if not a real range check. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just in the makeup of the preflop solutions, button is supposed to have a bunch of ace-x. That is supposed to flat here, as you said. A lot of middling pocket pairs as well, and yeah, we have to be very aware of that. We also have to be very aware of the fact that we're going to be playing out of position for the whole hand, so with our whole range, our equity realization is going to be low, and as a consequence, we can't just go mindlessly betting all of our top pair hands, because we have to think about our whole range here, at least in theory, because if we're playing against good opponents who may want to exploit that, of course, if you're playing at lower stakes and most of your opponents are just going to be bad players, you can just start playing your hand the way your hand wants to be played. And yeah, with this hand, I think we're comfortably in a situation where we don't have a lot of good properties going for it. We don't have, a backdoor flush. We do have a backdoor straight. We do block some of villain's stronger ace-x and some of their stronger pocket pairs, but we just don't really have any real equity with this hand. So I would just be pure checking this hand at least.
Okay, we do go for a check. I didn't even realize we had a backdoor straight draw. That's very... I had this friend who was like, I don't know, he was overcalling flops, big sizing in some spots where he shouldn't, and I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, he had like a low pair or something, and he's like, what? I have a backdoor full house. Like, okay.
Yeah, I think it's always important at least to try to recognize the properties of your hand, because there may be some spots where, it's worthwhile betting. If we had 9-10 of spades here, I think that could make more sense as a bet, right? Just because the properties of backdoor flush as well as backdoor straight, as well as blocking some stronger pocket pairs and stronger ace-x in villain's range. But yeah, generally going to be a check with range, I would imagine, or close to range in GTO. Ben Lafferty says, thank you guys. I jumped in late, but enjoyed it a lot. Makes me think a lot harder about flop check textures and how they interact with ranges. Thanks for joining, Ben, and glad you took something out of the session. See you next time, hopefully.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for joining. Glad to provide some value. Also, you didn't mention we actually have a 2-pair backdoor as well, so... Yeah, goes check. There's an 8 bringing in...
See. We pick up that backdoor straight draw now.
Yeah. Also bringing in the flush. I guess we are going to have some bets here, especially if we range check the flop. We're still going to have flushes, we're going to have strong ace-x, we're going to have some sets. So definitely putting in some bets here, but I assume we're mostly gonna want to bet for a small size. I guess that's what's going to put most of the range in a tougher spot. And then, again, if he has an ace-x, he's probably never folding. if he has pair with a heart, he's still probably never folding. Um, Again, in reality, as the same as before, he might not just check back enough flush draws, enough ace-x here, which might allow us to bet bigger, but then we should probably lower our betting frequency. This hand, to be honest, I would probably just always bet in practice, just assuming they're a bit more capped and usually overfolding, at least by the river. And we also block some nines and tens that should be in his range at some frequency and will probably call, especially with the heart. So yeah, I think I like betting this hand, especially if we use a small size. I think we could bet very frequently, but I think you've studied this spot more than me, so what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, haven't exactly studied this sort of texture yet at the moment. But yeah, generally I think this would make a lot of sense as a bet. As Alexandra said, we're blocking nines and tens. We're blocking some hands like 8-9, 10-8 suited that could be in villain's range. We're also going to be able to get better hands to fold, even for a small sizing. So we're going to get, Jack 10, Queen 10, King Queen type of hands that were flat in pre-flop to fold. So this has quite a bunch going for it. We're also going to get called by some better hands, but then we can still bluff those hands on the river. We still have equity against those hands. So, pocket fives with a heart, we have two overs. We could still potentially bluff on the river. So, yeah, I think I would bet this. In practice, like you said, probably a little bit more than I would be able to in GTO.
Okay, we do see a small bet and a fold. Okay, I guess that was it for today's stream. I actually like, showing these kind of hands because I think what a lot of people do wrong is they are reviewing their hands and never really looking at the small pots, and they don't really realize that these small pots are actually happening very, very frequently, like more frequently than spots where you're just getting your whole stack. And, there is some win rate to be made by playing these small spots correctly, so I actually enjoy reviewing them.
Yeah, I agree. And they, as you said, they happen so frequently, and they very often, there's a lot of spots that are just missed. And so, yeah, I like going over these two. But I think that's going to be everything for the stream. Thank you for everyone that joined in. We're going to mix up the time next week and choose a different time. Hopefully get a bit more interaction as well. Davide just says quickly, I prefer to bluff with 10-9 of hearts to block 9s and 10s with a heart better. Yeah, that makes sense. I think in this situation as well, you just have to be aware that if you're range checking flop, you're going to have your whole range of ace-x that wants to value bet.
10-9 of hearts is a flash. We can't really bluff a flash.
Oh yeah, I missed that. Yeah, of course, 9-10 would be a flush. So yeah, that's a value bet. Maybe all through, but me and Davide missed that anyway. Turning 9-10 hearts into a bluff. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and you can catch us next week. We'll give some information on when in our Discord, on the Run It Once Discord, and in the Run It Once forums as well.
All right, see you next week, and don't forget about the offer that you can get another free month of Elite or Essential memberships on RunItOnces if you hurry up and get a month now, or like an hour after the stream.
Funny enough, Davide says it was a joke on his part. I completely missed it as a joke. I completely missed we had a flush in that situation. So yeah, he got me. Okay.